Hello, everyone, and welcome to the School of Public Health Podcast Network. I'm Dr. Austin. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, and with me today is Megan Richard. Megan is a 2019 graduate of the undergraduate program in the School of Public Health, and today we're going to be talking about the job that she got immediately upon graduation with her undergraduate degree. So, Megan, let's start. Tell us about this job.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to talk with you guys about it. My position right now, I'm the Regional Public Health Emergency Coordinator at a local Department of Public Health. It is located right outside of St. Louis County. It's technically in St. Charles County, which is more of a suburb of St. Louis. But the population of the county is still pretty large. It's about 400,000. So the health department I work for is pretty big. Basically, in my position, I help foster collaboration among the local health departments and other necessary partners to help achieve an enhanced level of preparedness throughout the St. Louis region. So to do that, I am kind of the liaison between the local health departments in the St. Louis area and the state of Missouri. And I just kind of do some things here and there to help foster that collaboration. Just kind of depends on what's going on at the time, but that's kind of a big summary of what I do right now.
Emergency preparedness for what? What kinds of emergencies? Tell us more about that.
So we prepare for a lot of emergencies. Bioterrorism attacks, that's a really big one that we have to prepare for. Pandemic flu, really any sort of natural disaster, earthquakes, tornadoes, pretty much anything you can think of that would affect public health, we help plan for. So yeah, every health department in the St. Louis region has an emergency planner that does that specifically for their job. So it's very interesting to see what all goes into those plans, and it's cool being able to be the liaison between the state and the health departments as well for that.
So at this point, you've been in your job at the health department for about 9 months. Tell me about the most exciting things you've gotten to do there, and even some of the not so exciting things that you think are really helping you to build your skills in public health practice.
Yeah, so one really cool thing that I've been a part of, so every 5 years, the region has to put on a full-scale exercise. They ended up doing it in 2019. It was in October. So I wasn't there for the entire planning process because a lot of planning goes into that sort of exercise. But I was there for some of the planning and then there for the actual exercise. So it was very cool to see how all of that works, all the planning that goes into it, and also just see the exercise play out. And it was a really interesting topic. I won't go into too much detail, but it was basically there was an anthrax attack in St. Louis, in the St. Louis region. This is an exercise, but this was all an exercise. This has not really happened. But each health department in the St. Louis region, and both in Missouri and in Illinois, because St. Louis is on the border of Missouri and Illinois, every health department had to practice what that would look like at a local level. So basically, if that were to ever happen, the health departments have to get medication out to a bunch of people. So they kind of practice what that process looks like. And it was all within a week. We had all the emergency planners participate. We had public information officers participate. We had the epidemiologists participate. And it was a huge exercise. It was pretty successful overall. And it was just really cool to see everyone work together and what that entire process looks like. So it was very interesting. I was in charge of writing the report, the after-action report for that exercise as well. So basically just looking at, as a region, what the areas of improvement were and what we did well. So that's kind of what that report goes into. So yeah, that was a really cool experience. Since it only happens once every 5 years, I got to do that about 4 or 5 months after I started. So that one was really interesting. And also when I started there, I started in May, so just as the summer was starting, and there was a ton of flooding just because of the area. And so I kind of got to see what that actually in real life. It wasn't anything catastrophic, but there was a lot of flooding. So working with community partners on, planning and making sure everyone has the resources they need, things like that. That was kind of an interesting thing to jump into, but it was cool to see what all goes into that as well. Right now we're dealing with the coronavirus just like everyone else, so that's also been interesting to see how the epidemiologists and the emergency planners kind of work together for that as well.
Wow, so you applied for a job in January even though you weren't going to graduate until April. Why did you start working on getting a job so early?
So at the same time, I was also applying for Masters in Public Health, and I was just really interested to see what kind of jobs are out there in case I decided doing a master's right out of undergrad wasn't the right option. I just wanted to keep my options open for when I did graduate. I didn't have to look many places. I was very fortunate. I looked at my local, where I lived and where I graduated high school, I looked at the local health department and local county job page, and they had this job open. And it was specifically, I think on the job listing, it was actually called Public Health Program Coordinator. It was kind of vague, but it was definitely centered around emergency preparedness. So that was intimidating for me because I didn't know much about emergency preparedness going in. But I was able to utilize some of the resources on campus. I kind of asked some of my friends and looked on the school public health website and found Dr. McCormick, who has some experience in emergency preparedness, a lot of experience in emergency preparedness. She kind of gave me an emergency preparedness 101 when I was coming up with my presentation for the application process, because the first step was an interview. The second step, I had to do a presentation about a public health threat that could affect the county that I'm working for now, and just talking about the health impacts, and I had to talk about planning considerations as a county government for those types of disasters. I chose flooding as my disaster because where I live, it's very prone to flooding because St. Louis is right where the Missouri and the Mississippi River meet. So I emailed Dr. McCormick and I was like, hey, I've never had you in class, but I've heard that you know a lot about emergency preparedness, so I'd love your expertise, just like a quick 101 of what emergency preparedness is. And she was a huge, huge help. She kind of gave me some ideas of what I could talk about in my presentation. She went over my presentation with me once I kind of had developed it. And yeah, she was just a really huge help for that entire process. If I wouldn't have talked to her, I don't think I would have done as well on the presentation.
Am I remembering correctly that you went to UAB Scholars Bowl?
Yes,
and
I did.
Did you also do global health case competition? I can't remember.
Yes.
So tell me about how participating in those extracurricular activities helped you to be able to prepare what sounds like it must have been a really strong presentation because you got the job. So how did you learn how to do that through those extracurricular activities or through classes you took? Tell me about how you knew how to prepare a good presentation that got you the job.
Yeah, so like I said, the first part was the interview over the phone. For that part, I did a lot of student leadership on campus while I was an undergrad here. And especially I was a resident assistant. When I had to interview for being an RA, that gave me a lot of experience for how an interview was going to be for a job. So just interviewing for on-campus positions really did prepare me for what that would look like at a job. Also, those really common interview questions that they ask sometimes, I like to kind of think through those beforehand. So then it's not, you're not completely unprepared for those really basic questions. I can't think of one right now, but I just like to try to come up with some answers of what I think they might ask beforehand. So those were two things I really did that prepared me for the interview part. And then for the presentation, like I said, Dr. McCormick was a huge help with that, but also participating in the Scholars Bowl at St. Louis University and the Global Health Case Competition. I think participating in both of those really made me a much more confident presenter just because I really had to refine my presentation skills to do well in those competitions. Also, just taking public health classes. I mean, a lot of the classes here, you have to do projects and presentations and, doing that with working with a team on those and just presenting in front of a class really made me more confident over the years as well for the presentation portion. So I would say those were huge help for that as well.
You mentioned that you had to decide between going for a Master of Public Health degree right out of undergraduate or taking a job. And I remember we talked a lot at that time about how you were going to make that decision, what you were weighing. Can you talk me through a little bit about how you made that decision and what were the things that you were thinking about? What were your pros and cons on each, and how you finally decided to take the job right out of undergraduate?
Yeah, you were a huge help with helping me decide what I was going to do, because at the time I did not know what the best choice was for me. So really just talking to professors here on campus and getting their feedback on, between MPH and a job was a huge help. But I ultimately decided to go with a job just because I really wanted that boots on the ground experience at a health department. And I mean, also just the financial aspect. I wanted to be able to save up a little money before I went to do my graduate program. But really that experience, I think, has been so valuable for me to get right out of undergrad, because I do definitely want to get my master's degree. I'm looking to do it in the next year or so, hopefully. But I just think it will make my graduate education so much more valuable having that experience under my belt. I don't really know what job I ultimately want to do with my life, but I do know, like, for example, if I work doing research or something like that, having even a year or 2 or 3 or however long I work there, having that experience, knowing how a health department works and operates at a local level, that policy and research that I might do later on, I have a better idea of how that will affect people at the local level, which I think is really important, and not a lot of people really know how that works or how that looks. I really think that experience is a huge asset in that sense.
So to wrap up, Megan, what is some advice that you have for UAB undergraduate students in public health? How can they be successful like you and go out and get a job right after graduation? Megan didn't mention this, but she also got into several different Master of Public Health programs. So it really was a tough choice for her to decide what to do. But so you had all of those options available to you when you graduated. Based on your experiences, what advice do you have for students for how they can be similarly successful?
One thing I would definitely say is don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone when it comes to applying to jobs. My job is a perfect example. I did not know much about emergency preparedness, and it's very emergency preparedness focused. So even if you don't think that you aren't the right fit, I think it's still worth applying. And even if you don't get the job, it's still good for them to look at resume, see your name, and then if you apply there again, hopefully they know you're a serious applicant. That's kind of what I was thinking in my head when I applied for this job. So definitely don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone when it comes to applying, just because you might not be an expert in that field. And also I would say, of course, doing student leadership type things on campus, the Global Health Case Competition like we talked about, the Scholars Bowl, any leadership activity on campus, they really, really do prepare you for your job, just getting that experience. I mean, even my job now, I give presentations, and if I didn't have that experience in undergrad, I would not be at not that I'm a perfect presenter, but I wouldn't be at the level that I am now. I wouldn't be as confident as I am now. And also just utilizing your resources while you can on campus, like I talked about with Dr. McCormick. She was a huge help with the application process. If I didn't have her help, I don't think I would have done very well. So just utilizing your resources while you have them and while you're still here on campus.
So to wrap up, Megan, it sounds like one of the key things that you did was not only get experience throughout your whole time at UAB. You talked about all the different leadership opportunities that you had and the co-curricular things that you did. But I really love, and I didn't know you were going to say this, so I'm very touched that you said one of the most important things you did was to reach out to faculty and to ask for help. I know that you and I did talk many, many times, and we talked even after you graduated several times when you were still thinking, oh, maybe I should have gone to graduate school too, in addition to taking this job. And so I love that you really emphasized reaching out to faculty, even faculty that you don't necessarily know, and getting advice from them on what to do. So I think that's a great place to leave it, a great piece of advice for all students. Know that you can reach out to faculty, whether or not you've had classes with them, to academic advisors, to people in the Career Center. There's just so many resources here at UAB. And so it's great to know that the expectation is that you'll reach out to people and have them continue to help you, continue to support you as you find your next steps after you leave UAB.
And I definitely would say, too, with all of that, another small piece of advice, I guess, is I was very, and you know this because we talked so much about this when I was trying to decide what to do. I was very scared to take a break from school because, I mean, and I'm sure a lot of people are in the same shoes as me. I mean, school is all I've ever known. You know, I've been going to school since I was 5 years old. So that was another reason why I was so scared in the beginning to take the job, just because I was like, I've been in school for so long. Why wouldn't I continue to be in school? Why wouldn't I continue doing school? But I would say to just not be, not have that fear as much going into it, because it really can be a good experience if you go in with the right mindset.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for coming back and talking with us today.
No problem.
And telling us about your experiences and how your preparation here at UAB got you to your first destination after graduation.
Yes, I couldn't have done it without you guys.
Thanks.